We're here with Chris Kortlander at the This Is Our West conference here in Montana. Chris, thank you very much for being with us.
Alex, thank you for being here.
So you had a fascinating story to tell. And you have actually several fascinating stories. But first of all, I'm curious about what the federal government did to you, and just give us some of the details of what happened.
In 2005 and 2008, I was raided by heavily armed Bureau of Land Management agents, SWAT team. I'm the founding director of the Custer Battlefield Museum. I own and operate the historic town of Garryo in Montana, the only location of a tomb of a United States unknown soldier outside of Pearl Harbor in Arlington, Virginia, anywhere in the country. I built the museum there a quarter of a century ago, and I was raided in 2005 and 2008 by Bureau of Land Management agents that came in to raid me over Indian artifacts. But years later, I found out through a leaked document from somebody inside the deep state that wanted me to know the truth, that this is all about funding from Congress, how the Bureau of Land Management law enforcement gets $250 million every 12 months to fund their 211 agents. $250 million for 211 agents every 12 months. So this all happened because of the Patriot Act, because when the Patriot Act got passed, five weeks after 9/11, what happened? Each one of the secretaries of the President's cabinet got their own quasi-military style federal police department. Once you put the genie out of the bottle, it's hard to put the genie back in the bottle. And they have to justify their existence, so they were ordered to go out and raid high-profile people so they could get national publicity, to get their funding in front of Congress, because they had too much money in their coffers to go back and beg for another $250 million. So the leaked document, that's the basis for my book, Arrow to the Heart, The Last Battle at the Little Bighorn, the Custer Battlefield Museum versus the federal government. It encompasses why the Gibson guitar got raided, the Custer Battlefield Museum, and the Four Corners raid in Blanding, Utah, and a total of 4 people committed suicide after being interviewed and interrogated by Bureau of Land Management. I'm just going to call them terrorists because that's what they are. They're domestic terrorists, federal agents that are condoned by our federal government. And I just want to mention, the reason I say that, they may sound extreme, but it's not. They came into our museum with automatic weapons over a military button and took our museum interns down at gunpoint, spread eagle on the floor, that had master's degrees, and they actually touched the barrel to the back of their skull while they're laying spread eagle on the floor, just to exercise their power.
And so what can people do about this kind of abuse? You mentioned you had been to Washington, D.C., and what can a normal person at home who sees this and is horrified do to try to stop it?
Get on the internet, look up HR 622. It's a House bill. It has some co-sponsors right now. Write to your elected federal officials about this government overreach. We don't need federal police to police the citizens of the United States inside of our boundaries. Put these overzealous Bureau of Land Management agents on our borders. Get rid of the Bureau of Land Management law enforcement. Defund them from Congress, and put them on our border with the Border Patrol. Let them exercise their authority against the enemies that are trying to come into our country, not against the U.S. citizens. Everything that I've mentioned in this brief interview, nobody had criminal backgrounds. They're raiding us over nonviolent crimes with automatic weapons. What is this all about?
And, just for the audience to be clear, what was the resolution of your case?
I was never indicted. I was never charged with the crime. I spent almost $500,000 on legal fees over a period of 10 years, fighting the bureaucracy that I was involved in. They threatened me. I was in front of the grand jury 4 different times and no indictments. It was a blessing from God, since a grand jury can indict a ham sandwich. You've heard of that saying. I thought I was going to get indicted. Once you're indicted, you'll plead to something just to get rid of the problem. I'm a former Montana law enforcement officer. When I was in the jails, I heard I didn't do this. I pled guilty. It was such a rough interrogation. I didn't know what I was doing, and I always thought they weren't telling me the truth. Totally different view on things now, because it happened to me. It happened to me when federal agents came in and put guns to our head in hopes that we were going to fold and plead to a lesser crime just so they could get another mark on the chalkboard that they got a conviction.
And one of the whistleblowers from within the bureaucracy, a guy called Larry Wooten, revealed some really troubling stuff. Is that relevant to some of the raids that happened, for example, in your case or some of these others that you mentioned? Is this a systemic problem within BLM?
Totally. Agent Larry Wooten is an unbelievable patriot that came forward. It was his own men that were doing the misfeasance and malfeasance inside the federal government, inside the Bureau of Land Management, law enforcement. He was a supervising officer, an agent, and he decided that the Bundys were in prison. It was the Wooten letter that basically blew the Bundy case wide open, and why Judge Navarro had no choice but to totally dismiss all the charges, and it was all because of Agent Larry Wooten.
Chris, this is a lot. Anything else you want to add?
Yes. My website, arrowtotheheartbook.com. Go to media. You can pull up the Wooten letter. You can pull up the leaked document that was sent to me. It's all on my website, arrowtotheheartbook.com.
Excellent. Chris, thank you so much.
Thank you.